Naomi's fingers trembled as she clutched the worn leather-bound journal, her grandmother's final gift. The faded pages held secrets of a love story that spanned decades, waiting to be uncovered. As she settled into her favourite reading nook by the bay window, Naomi had no idea that opening this book would set in motion a series of events that would change her life forever. The first entry was dated June 15, 1955. Her grandmother's elegant script danced across the page. "Today, I met a boy who made my heart skip a beat. His name is Joshua, and he has the most captivating blue eyes I've ever seen." Naomi smiled, imagining her grandmother as a young woman experiencing the first flutters of love. She continued reading, lost in the vivid descriptions of stolen glances, secret meetings, and the thrill of forbidden romance. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across her small apartment, Naomi reluctantly closed the journal. She had barely made it through the first few entries, but already she felt a connection to her grandmother's story that she couldn't explain. With a sigh, she placed the book on her nightstand and prepared for bed, her mind swirling with images of a love that seemed to transcend time. The next morning, Naomi woke with a start, her alarm blaring insistently. She groaned, remembering she had an important meeting at work. As she rushed to get ready, her eyes kept darting to the journal, tempting her to lose herself in its pages once more. But duty called, and she forced herself to focus on the day ahead. The bustling streets of New York City greeted her as she stepped out of her apartment building. The familiar cacophony of honking horns and chattering pedestrians usually energized her, but today she felt distracted. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind, painting a picture of a simpler time when love seemed pure and uncomplicated. Lost in thought, Naomi didn't notice the man hurrying in her direction until it was too late. They collided, sending her coffee flying and scattering papers across the sidewalk. "I'm so sorry!" a deep voice exclaimed. "Are you all right?" Naomi looked up, ready to unleash her frustration, but the words died on her lips. Standing before her was a man with the most striking blue eyes she had ever seen. For a moment she forgot how to breathe. Yes, I'm fine," she managed to stammer, just a little startled. The man knelt down to help her gather her papers, his brow furrowed with concern. "I should have been paying more attention. Please, let me buy you another coffee to make up for it." Naomi hesitated. She was already running late for her meeting, but something about this man intrigued her. "That's very kind of you, but I really should be going. I have an important presentation this morning." The man nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Of course. Well, how about a rain check then?" He pulled out a business card and scribbled something on the back before handing it to her. "I'm Joshua, by the way, Joshua Carter." Naomi's heart skipped a beat at the name. Joshua, just like in her grandmother's journal. She took the card, her fingers brushing against his. "I'm Naomi Foster." Joshua smiled, and Naomi felt as if the world had suddenly become brighter. "It's nice to meet you, Naomi. I hope we'll see each other again soon." With that, he disappeared into the crowd, leaving Naomi standing on the sidewalk, clutching his business card and wondering if fate had just intervened in her life. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Naomi managed to deliver her presentation successfully, but her mind kept wandering back to those blue eyes and the name that seemed too coincidental to ignore. As soon as she returned home, she reached for her grandmother's journal, eager to lose herself in the story once more. Hours slipped by as Naomi devoured page after page. Her grandmother's romance with Joshua blossomed despite the obstacles they faced: disapproving parents, societal expectations, and the looming threat of war. Their love seemed to grow stronger with each challenge, and Naomi found herself rooting for them, even though she knew how the story must end. After all, her grandfather's name had been Robert, not Joshua. As she neared the middle of the journal, Naomi came across an entry that made her heart ache. August 10th, 1956. "My dearest Joshua has been called to serve overseas. The thought of him facing danger in a foreign land terrifies me, but I know he must go. We made promises to each other under the stars last night. No matter what happens, our love will endure. I'll wait for him, even if it takes a lifetime." Naomi wiped away a tear, feeling her grandmother's pain as if it were her own. She glanced at the clock, surprised to see it was well past midnight. With reluctance, she closed the journal and prepared for bed, her dreams filled with visions of star-crossed lovers and promises made beneath a moonlit sky. The next morning, Naomi woke with a sense of purpose. She couldn't explain it, but she felt compelled to learn more about the Joshua from her grandmother's past. And perhaps, if she was honest with herself, she was also curious about the Joshua she had met on the street. After a quick shower and a hastily eaten breakfast, Naomi found herself standing in front of her laptop, Joshua Carter's business card in hand. She hesitated for a moment before typing his name into the search bar. To her surprise, several results popped up. Joshua Carter was apparently a successful architect, known for his innovative designs that blended modern aesthetics with environmental sustainability. Naomi clicked through a few articles, learning that Joshua had recently moved back to New York after spending several years working abroad. His latest project, a revolutionary eco-friendly skyscraper, was set to break ground in the coming months. As she read about his accomplishments, Naomi couldn't help but feel a twinge of admiration. This Joshua seemed to be a man of substance, dedicated to making a positive impact on the world. She found herself wondering what it would be like to know him better. Before she could talk herself out of it, Naomi reached for her phone and dialed the number on Joshua's business card. Her heart raced as the phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Just as she was about to hang up, a familiar deep voice answered. "Joshua Carter speaking." Naomi took a deep breath. "Hi, Joshua. This is Naomi. We ran into each other yesterday." Literally. There was a pause, and for a moment Naomi feared he had forgotten her. But then she heard a warm chuckle. "Naomi, I'm glad you called. I was hoping I'd hear from you." Relief washed over her. "I was wondering if that rain check for coffee was still on the table." "Absolutely," Joshua replied, enthusiasm evident in his voice. "Are you free this afternoon? There's a great little cafe near Central Park that I think you'd love." Naomi glanced at her calendar, seeing nothing but a free afternoon stretching before her. "That sounds perfect. Shall we say 2 o'clock? They agreed on the details, and as Naomi hung up the phone, she felt a flutter of excitement in her stomach. She couldn't remember the last time she had felt this way about meeting someone new. The hours seemed to crawl by as Naomi waited for their coffee date. She tried to distract herself by doing some work, but her mind kept wandering to thoughts of Joshua, both the one from her grandmother's past and the one she was about to meet. Finally, it was time to leave. Naomi chose a simple sundress and sandals, wanting to look nice, but not like she was trying too hard. As she was about to walk out the door, her eyes fell on her grandmother's journal. On impulse, she grabbed it and slipped it into her bag. The cafe Joshua had chosen was charming, with wrought iron tables spilling out onto the sidewalk and the scent of freshly baked pastries wafting through the air. Naomi arrived a few minutes early and chose a table with a view of the park. She had just settled in when she saw Joshua approaching, looking even more handsome than she remembered in a crisp blue shirt that made his eyes stand out. "Naomi," he said warmly, leaning in to kiss her cheek. "You look lovely." She blushed, feeling like a schoolgirl with her first crush. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." They ordered their coffees and fell into easy conversation. Joshua told her about his work as an architect and his passion for sustainable design. Naomi found herself captivated by his enthusiasm and the way his eyes lit up when he talked about his projects. In turn, she shared stories about her job in marketing and her love of literature. As they chatted, Naomi felt a connection growing between them, a sense of familiarity that seemed to defy the short time they had known each other. During a lull in the conversation, Naomi's hand unconsciously drifted to her bag, where her grandmother's journal lay hidden. Joshua noticed the movement and raised an eyebrow. "Is everything all right?" he asked. "You seem a bit distracted." Naomi hesitated, unsure whether to share the story of the journal. But something in Joshua's kind gaze encouraged her to open up. "Actually, there's something I've been wanting to ask you," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "It might sound a bit strange, but do you know anything about your family history? Specifically, did you have a relative named Joshua who lived in New York in the 1950s? Joshua's brow furrowed in confusion. That's an oddly specific question. May I ask why you're curious? Naomi took a deep breath and pulled out the journal. My grandmother left me this journal when she passed away. It tells the story of her first love, a man named Joshua who she met in 1955. When I bumped into you and heard your name, I couldn't help but wonder if there might be a connection. Joshua's eyes widened in surprise. He reached out and gently touched the worn leather cover of the journal. May I? He asked softly. Naomi nodded, and Joshua carefully opened the book, his eyes scanning the first few pages. As he read, his expression changed from curiosity to shock. Naomi, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I think this Joshua might have been my grandfather. Now it was Naomi's turn to be surprised. But how is that possible? My grandmother ended up marrying someone else, my grandfather, Robert. Joshua nodded slowly. My grandfather never spoke much about his past, but I remember overhearing a conversation between him and my grandmother once. He mentioned a lost love from his youth, someone he had to leave behind when he went off to war. He never said her name, but could it be? They spent the next hour poring over the journal together, piecing together the story of their grandparents' ill-fated romance. As they read, Naomi felt as if she was seeing her grandmother in a whole new light, understanding the depth of the love she had experienced and the pain of losing it. When they reached the entry about Joshua being called to war, Naomi saw tears glistening in Joshua's eyes. He cleared his throat before speaking. My grandfather was wounded in combat. He spent months recovering in a hospital overseas. By the time he made it back to New York, he believed too much time had passed. He thought your grandmother would have moved on, so he never reached out to her. Naomi's heart ached at the thought of the misunderstanding that had kept their grandparents apart. And my grandmother? She must have thought he had forgotten about her, or worse. They sat in silence for a moment, both lost in thoughts of what might have been. Finally, Joshua reached across the table and took Naomi's hand in his. Naomi, he said softly, I know this might sound crazy, but I can't help feeling like there's a reason we met. Like somehow, our grandparents' story is giving us a second chance at the love they lost. Naomi felt a shiver run down her spine at his words. She had been thinking the same thing, but had been afraid to voice it. I feel it too, she admitted. But Joshua, we barely know each other. How can we be sure this isn't just the romance of the situation clouding our judgment? Joshua smiled, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. You're right, we don't know each other well yet, but I'd like to change that. What do you say we take things slow, get to know each other properly, and see where this leads? Naomi found herself nodding, a warmth spreading through her chest. I'd like that very much. As they left the cafe, walking hand in hand through Central Park, Naomi couldn't help but feel that she was at the beginning of her own epic love story. The journal in her bag seemed to pulse with the energy of possibilities, a tangible link between past and present. Over the next few weeks, Naomi and Joshua spent every spare moment together. They explored the city, discovering hidden gems and creating new memories in the places their grandparents might have once walked. They shared long conversations over candlelit dinners, learning about each other's hopes, dreams, and fears. With each passing day, Naomi found herself falling deeper in love with Joshua. It wasn't just his striking good looks or his charming personality that drew her in. It was the way he listened intently when she spoke, the passion he showed for his work, and the kindness he extended to everyone he met. One evening, as they strolled along the Hudson River, watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant hues of orange and pink, Joshua turned to Naomi with a serious expression. There's something I need to tell you, he said, his voice tinged with nervousness. Naomi's heart skipped a beat. What is it? Joshua took a deep breath. I've been offered a job in London. It's an amazing opportunity to work on a groundbreaking sustainable housing project, but it would mean leaving New York for at least a year. Naomi felt as if the ground had dropped out from beneath her feet. They'd only known each other for a short time, but the thought of Joshua leaving was almost unbearable. When would you have to go? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "In 2 months," Joshua replied, his eyes searching her face. "Naomi, I know it's a lot to ask, but would you consider coming with me?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Naomi's mind raced. Could she really uproot her entire life for a man she had known for such a short time? But then again, hadn't her grandmother's journal taught her that true love was worth taking risks for? I don't know, Joshua, she said honestly. It's a big decision. I'd have to leave my job, my friends, my whole life here. Joshua nodded, understanding in his eyes. I know it's not an easy choice, and I want you to know that whatever you decide, it won't change how I feel about you. We can make this work, even if we're apart for a while. Naomi felt tears welling up in her eyes. She reached out and cupped Joshua's face in her hands. Give me some time to think about it, okay? He leaned in and kissed her softly. Take all the time you need. That night, Naomi tossed and turned, unable to sleep. She reached for her grandmother's journal, seeking comfort in its familiar pages. As she read through the entries detailing the pain of separation during the war years, she felt a renewed appreciation for the strength of her grandmother's love. In the early hours of the morning, Naomi made her decision. She would go to London with Joshua. It was a leap of faith, but something in her heart told her it was the right choice. The next 2 months flew by in a whirlwind of preparations. Naomi gave notice at her job, sublet her apartment, and said tearful goodbyes to her friends and family. Through it all, Joshua was by her side, his unwavering support giving her the courage to embrace this new adventure. On the day of their departure, as they stood in JFK Airport waiting to board their flight, Naomi felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. Joshua squeezed her hand reassuringly. Are you ready for this? He asked, his blue eyes twinkling with anticipation. Naomi took a deep breath and nodded, as ready as I'll ever be. As they settled into their seats on the plane, Naomi pulled out her grandmother's journal one last time. She opened it to the final entry, which she had read countless times but never fully understood until now. Life doesn't always unfold the way we expect it to. Sometimes the love we think is meant to last forever slips through our fingers. But that doesn't mean we should close our hearts to new possibilities. Every ending is a new beginning, and true love has a way of finding us when we least expect it. So, my dear grandchild, love is a complex and powerful force. It can bring immense joy, but also great pain when mishandled. Remember that true love is built on trust, respect, and honesty. Never compromise your integrity or hurt those who care for you deeply. Life will present you with many challenges and temptations. When faced with difficult choices, listen to your conscience and consider how your actions may impact others. Forgiveness is possible, but rebuilding trust takes time and sincere effort from all involved. Your journey of self-discovery and growth continues. Learn from past mistakes, but don't let them define you. With wisdom gained from experience, you have the power to create healthier relationships built on mutual understanding and open communication. The road ahead may not always be easy, but stay true to your values. Cherish the love of family and nurture the bonds that truly matter. In time, you'll find your way to genuine happiness and fulfillment, guided by the lessons of the past and hope for the future. Remember, you are stronger than you know. Face each day with courage, compassion, and integrity. Your story is still being written. Make it one of redemption, growth, and unconditional love. Naomi closed the journal, tears glistening in her eyes. Her grandmother's words resonated deeply, offering both comfort and guidance. She realized that her own journey with Joshua was just beginning, filled with its own challenges and opportunities for growth. As she gazed out the window, watching the city bustle below, Naomi felt a renewed sense of purpose. She would approach her relationship with Joshua with honesty and care, mindful of the lessons her grandmother had learned. The future was uncertain, but Naomi was determined to face it with an open heart and the wisdom passed down through generations.